Well, good evening, everyone. This is Terra Quator. It is your day 24.
I thought of something funnier
Not a
than
whole lot going
24.
on still, because less and less happens for us toward the end of each month. So, really, it's us just trying to get through the rest of the month, get it over with, kind of thing. But I guess the only thing I could really talk about is my displeasure with the lack of vetting at my daughter Buttercup's school, because I guess they had a substitute PE teacher today that, for an elementary school PE teacher, just took things way too far. The good news is I don't have to call, like, I don't think I need to call the school to talk about it. They might send out a notice later. We'll find out. But really, it's already been dealt with because the substitute teacher was fired. And from what I've heard, is that the principal of my daughter's school said that this substitute will never work at a school in Oklahoma again. Which, if that's the case, that's a good thing. Because from what I heard, he treated third graders like a military boot camp, just screaming and yelling at the kids constantly. Like, they didn't even do that to students in the 1950s, where they expected, older students to be more, quote unquote, battle ready in case S hit the fan. But third graders, yeah, you don't need to be screaming and yelling at them. Apparently one kid acted up, and the substitute made every one of the students run 20 laps around the gym, which is highly inappropriate for third graders, and sent every one of them out of the class crying, where two students were so traumatized they had to go home. So having to go home from being traumatized from that, to me, sounds a little overly sheltered. But if the whole classroom was bawling and crying because they were being worked way too hard, yeah, it was very logical to fire the PE teacher for being abusive. I'll find out whether or not this substitute faces charges for child abuse, but we'll find out, because I understand with public schools, teachers get away with quite a bit, but abusing children should not be one of them. It's like, oh, I didn't hit the kids. No, you just screamed and yelled at them and made them, force them to overexert themselves for the actions of one person. But like I said, it's already been dealt with, so I really don't need to worry about it. Teacher's been fired. We'll find out later if this substitute teacher, sorry, we'll see if he faces charges or anything. Nothing too big, because I mean, no one was actually hurt. No one. It wasn't like when I was in Navy boot camp back in '07, where when I was in, you'd get IT'd, or intensive training, where they work you out until you can barely move, kind of thing. But our RDCs, when I was in boot camp, was good about it. They wouldn't overdo it. But there was an RDC for a division. I want to say one floor. I want to say deck, but because it was above ground, it's not a deck, it's a floor or level above us. One level above us, there was an RDC with his division that he would IT his division every single night, just because. But I do know that RDC did get reprimanded because he was someone who took things too far. He would IT them for no particular reason, and he wouldn't stop until one of the recruits was sent out in an ambulance. So they wouldn't stop until one of them had to go out in an ambulance. Yeah, that RDC, from what I know, did. I think I think, as far as I know, he did face a captain's mask, but I'm not 100% sure. I know for sure not a court martial, because it didn't run into the breadth of being a court martial. But I think he faced a captain's mask for it. But there is such thing as taking things too far, in this elementary third grade PE teacher, substitute, did take things too far. So I guess the main complaint I have is they need to vet their teachers and their substitutes a lot more. I understand there are shortages because of how tense things are, but we definitely don't need boot camp style PE for third graders. It's entirely. I can understand maybe some middle schoolers and some high schoolers need that, if especially in schools where there are behavioral problems. But elementary, definitely not. It creates more problems than it fixes. Yeah, that's a rant for that one. Um, yeah, I did go to boot camp and I did join the Navy in 2007. Didn't last long. Don't need to talk about it. It's a long story that I don't need to talk about because it opens up a whole can of worms. No, I didn't face any negative repercussions, but my discharge was odd. No, nothing negative there, but I don't like talking about it too much because again the can of worms it opens with the whole bureaucratic systems because yeah, let's just leave it at that. Don't need to talk about that. Anyway, outside of that, not a whole lot going on, and want to make the family something kind of nicer tonight. So I'm just gonna do some sautéed chicken and mashed potatoes with brown gravy, and maybe some broccoli and cheese sauce. Something nicer than usual because we do have to keep our budget very simplistic throughout the month, especially toward the end of the month when our supplies run low. You gotta love living technically below the poverty line and trying to get by with food when they keep jacking the prices of food up. So when they talk about inflation getting better, it's getting better for the upper class and their commodities, luxury commodities. But when it comes to necessities for the lower class, for the poor working class, yeah, that's still going up. So I'm not too thrilled about that. But I still try to get by. I try to calculate everything. Luckily, there's so many questions I have when it comes to the most important, like the grain foods. Like, why is our rice so much more expensive than any other country, kind of thing. But I know people are complaining about rice being more expensive. I can't be eating too much rice, so I'm now looking to make sure the rice is not enriched, kind of stuff. But when you're as low income as we are, you make do. Luckily, basmati rice is actually one of my favorite rices. I prefer longer grain so long as it's not enriched. Now, if I could afford it, I'd be getting the long grain black wild rice. That stuff is amazing. The texture is great too, especially if you get the organic long grain black wild rice where it still has the germ and everything. Oh, it's so good. There is one grain-esque food that it does not make sense why it's so expensive, because it really shouldn't be, is couscous. I can only find one type of couscous in the market now, and they charge so freaking much for it. Why is couscous so expensive when it's literally pasta byproduct? And by byproduct, I mean when they're cutting their pasta noodles, it's literally the ground up bits from the cut that didn't make it through their slicer or their extruder. So it's just ground up semolina flour. Why is that more expensive than the pasta itself? It doesn't make sense to me. I might just have to start making couscous myself by getting like things of angel hair pasta and carefully sending it through a food processor so it's tiny granules but not a powder. That might be a good idea. I think I might experiment with that sometime because couscous is definitely my kid's favorite pasta. It's just so stupid that it's the most expensive pasta. It is so dumb. It makes no sense, but even I've liked couscous since I was a little kid. Loved it. I mean, I think it's mostly a texture thing, I think. I mean, I have noticed that texture with food is surprisingly important for me. Not looks, texture. Well, obviously taste, but the next one under taste is more texture than it is looks. Because I've had some really nice looking food where the texture just made me want to vomit. It does happen. Like, I don't like raw onions in my bean and cheese burritos. The contrast in the texture is awful. You're just biting into something, it's nice and chewy and everything like that. All of a sudden, crunch. That doesn't belong there. It would be easier if you do a burrito like they do sometimes over at Taco Bell where they throw the flaming hot Fritos in there. don't order them to go. You have to order it there. And I understand how much harder that's getting these days. I've already had the rant about my hatred of fast food restaurants, so I don't need to go into that again. Maybe I'll touch on that subject again in the next 6 months just to remind people that you shouldn't be ordering fast food anymore anyway. Maybe what I'll do is I'll give you my version of a recipe to make Taco Bell style ground beef at home without having to use their flavor packets that you can order or that you can buy over at grocery stores. It's a little more expensive, that there is a better way, because the problem with doing it that way is you have to use water. Water dilutes your spices, so if you want something to still have plenty of that flavor in there, don't use water, because the water is just going to dilute all of it. I understand using a little cornstarch or a little flour to thicken it later on, but I think I'll go over my version of a recipe for it another day, because this is already dragging on. Gotta love your day 24s when you finally have something to talk about, but you're going to jump topics because I am on a manic day. I'm bipolar. Yesterday was definitely an off day, and today feels like more of a happily manic day. Yay! Yeah, that's how it goes sometimes. But anyway, again, this is your day 24. It is a nice Wednesday. I have a lot to make sure that things get, or a lot of things to make sure get done. I don't like I don't like those choice of word combinations. I was grammatically incorrect. There are a great many things I need to ensure get done before tomorrow, because we have property management coming out today. Yes, we rent. If I didn't rent, I would have things on the wall, because under our rental contract, we're not allowed to have anything on the walls. It would be different if we lived in California or states where the tenants' rights also have rules where you can put things on the wall, because if you're renting there, it's as if it's your home so long as you take care of it, kind of thing. But in Oklahoma, that doesn't fall under the tenants' rights laws. So I followed the contract. Jean-Louis would be proud. Kind of. Anyway, this is your day 24. This is Terraquator, and I'll see everyone tomorrow.